Hello, my beautiful mythical creatures. Ace here, he, she. I'm back at you with another Podfic. And today today I have a surprise, which is, look, I got a little character now. And she's holding Todoroki. Wait, give me a sec. Let me make it closer for you guys. Todoroki! Okay, that's not really closer. But Todoroki! But we're doing Someone Like You by Sparky Pasker. And we're doing chapter 17. And there are trigger warnings in this chapter, which the trigger warnings is physical abuse, and that's it. But trigger warnings, the link and summary will be in this description. And don't forget to hop over to AO3 and give the original author kudos. But on with the chapter. Chapter 17. It took 2 days for Inko to discover the money was gone. Izuku had just gotten home from the gym. He walked through the front door of the apartment, turned around to shut the door, then turned back into the apartment and was preparing to take off his shoes when Inko stepped out of the living room. "Where is my money?" Inko asked, quietly and calmly. The hairs on Izuku's arms raised. "I spent my money on my equipment, just like I said I was going to," Izuku responded. It was only partly a lie. He was certainly not going to tell her he had set up a new bank account and moved it all there. Even if she went online and saw the electronic transfer to a bank account in the Cayman Islands, there is no way she would know it was Izuku's own account and not him paying for his uniform. "I thought I ordered you to give up being a crime fighter," Inko seethed. All I have ever wanted was to help people. I am not going to stop just because you don't approve." A slap resounded through the apartment. Izuku's head was turned to the side and his cheek was bright red. A small cut from Inko's diamond wedding ring dribbled blood. Inko grabbed Izuku by his hair, threw him to the ground without letting go, and then dragged him behind her down the hall towards his room. Izuku screamed, but knew no help was coming. The neighbors were not shy about voicing their dislike for Izuku. Rather than call the police, they were more likely to call the landlord to have him removed. It had happened before, back when he was a child, and hadn't yet realized that screaming wouldn't do anything. Inko had used her feminine woes and poor single mother act to change the landlord's mind. After all, it would look bad for her if her hungry 5-year-old son was kicked out onto the street and he came across someone who might actually make a fuss about it. At least until those people found out he was quirkless. But they would take him back home and probably yell at Inko before they found that out. And by that time, her reputation would be ruined. Izuku had learned his lesson by the time he was 6. Izuku saw a padlock screwed into his door and frame before he was thrown into his room. He felt each individual hair being pulled out from his head. He slid across the hardwood floor, his spine rammed into the footboard of his bed. Izuku saw Inko's fury one last time before the door was slammed shut and the lock clicked shut. "You'll never be a crime fighter." Inko's muffled voice traveled through the door. "Your only purpose in life is to be my cash cow. Better get used to it." Her footsteps resounded as she walked down the hall to continue her day. Izuku laid on his floor in shock. He pushed himself up and carefully leaned back against the bed. He could already feel the bruise blooming on his spine. Izuku had long ago come to realize that Inko was emotionally and psychologically abusive. More recently, he had discovered she was financially as well. Before, Inko had never physically abused him, or do those times she locked him out of the house count? Well, either way, she had never hit him before. Until she stole his money, he figured he would be able to put up with her treatment of him, as long as he had the freedom to do what he wanted and had a place to sleep out of the elements. He had been hoping she wouldn't find out about the money until after he was gone. But obviously, that didn't happen. Now he had two choices. He could either stay in the apartment with Inko until his apartment was ready and try to survive her wrath. She had never used her quirk on Izuku, but he had studied it enough to know exactly what she was capable of. She was a nurse in the surgical unit. She had a license to use her quirk at work, and would often be instructed by the surgeon to remove objects and organs that would be too dangerous to remove by hand or tool. His other option would be to leave and live on the streets for a few days. Izuku's choice was obvious. He could survive on the street. Izuku grabbed his backpack from the back of his closet, packed enough clothes to get him through until he moved into the apartment and he could wash them, and stuffed his laptop and charger cord in between the clothes to cushion it. Good thing he didn't have any school supplies to take with him. The bag was full enough as it was. He wouldn't get his supply list from St. Dames for a few months yet. Inko had unknowingly given him one last gift by stopping him at the door. He still had his shoes on. He was also wearing the lightweight jacket he had worn to the gym. He had a heavier coat hanging in his closet. Izuku put it on. He wouldn't need it during the day, but it was still getting near freezing at night, so he would need it. After he finished packing, Izuku opened the window to his room and looked down. He had never used it to leave before. He had never needed to. He could always just walk out the front door. He was on the 3rd floor. He had never even jumped from this height while running through his parkour routine. It looked like he would be testing out the shoes then. Hatsumi said they were impact absorbing. If they weren't, then he was going to end up with at least a fracture. It wouldn't be the first time. He would be uncomfortable for a few weeks, but it wouldn't be too bad. Izuku tossed his backpack down first, making sure it would land close first, to protect the laptop from impact of the fall. If it landed with a thud, Izuku froze. Inko didn't come back, and no one from below opened their windows. It's possible they looked out their window but didn't see anything, or maybe the neighbors were at work. Their neighbors were mostly elderly, but they could be out doing something. That made Izuku wonder why Inko wasn't at work, but decided it wasn't his problem anymore. And considering her attitude recently, she probably quit when she saw Izuku was making enough money for her to live off of. Izuku jumped out of the window and landed firmly on his feet, knees bent in a crouch. His eyes widened in surprise. He hadn't felt a thing. Well, now he knew he could jump from at least 3 stories high and land safely. He collected his bag and walked out of the neighborhood calmly. If he ran like he wanted to, it would be suspicious. And the last thing he wanted was someone telling Inko he was out before he had the chance to get away. It had been a full 24 hours since Inko put Izuku in a timeout. That should be plenty of time for him to calm down and get that silly notion of crime fighting out of his head. He should have known he wasn't good for anything more than making her money. In fact, Inko was kind enough to have found Izuku another job. She had contacted a friend of hers who specialized in finding work for people with less than desirable quirks. She had known him since high school. Grin was such a little shit, but even in school, he could always find the perfect person for any job. She was going to talk to him about it as she walked him to work that day. He never told her where he was working, so she needed to find out anyways to make sure he would always go. After all, he didn't get paid if he didn't show up. Inko took the padlock key out of her pocket and unlocked the door. She froze in shock. When she opened the door, Izuku's window was open, and he was gone. Inko wanted to force herself to believe he had been kidnapped, but she knew that wasn't the case. She knew her son and how stubborn he could be. He had escaped on his own, but he couldn't have gotten away without hurting himself. This was the 3rd floor. He probably fractured his foot or ankle jumping out the window. He knew better than to go to any hospital or doctor, so he was probably holed up somewhere waiting for it to heal. She will just have to see if the police will help her find him. If she cries enough, there's no doubt he would come home by nightfall. Inko paused outside her neighborhood police station. It had always been easy for her to cry. That particular ability had helped her many times throughout her life. If she ever got a bad grade in school, her tears were her way of getting her grades up. Her classmates had to sleep with the teacher, but she was far above that. Her friend Mitsuki always admonished her for putting down the girls that did it. But really, who could blame her for just saying what everyone was thinking? Inka walked through the front door of the station, tears in her eyes and a handkerchief clutched between her hands. "Please, officer, you have to help me. My son is missing," she said quickly with a quiver in her voice. "I think he was kidnapped. We live on the 3rd floor of our building, and his door was locked. I opened the door with my quirk, and he was gone." and his window was open, so he had to have been kidnapped. Please, you have to help me. Inko's cries became louder and more frantic as she told her story. Ma'am, calm down. When did you notice your son missing? And when did you last see him? This morning. I saw him yesterday morning. He came home from the gym and went straight to his room and didn't come out for the rest of the night. Not even for supper. Would you say this is unusual for your son? Yes, definitely. He's such a good boy. He will always greet his mother when he comes home. I don't think he was kidnapped then. If he was acting out of character, he probably had some friends of his help him run away. I'm sure he will be back soon. Unfortunately, we can't investigate missing persons until it has been at least 48 hours since they had been seen. But you see, my son, he's quirkless. He doesn't have any friends and wouldn't have been able to fall that far without being hurt. Oh, if that's the case, you should just give up then. Inko's eyes dried up in an instant. What? She asked in a monotone. Yeah, he's probably already dead. And if someone did take him alive, he's not going to be for long. Corkless sold on the black market to some foreigners don't last long. It's best just to cut your losses now. Inko stormed out of the police station, grieving Mother forgotten. If the police won't help her, she will just have to find someone else. Maybe she would give Hisashi a call. Sakauchi walked into the precinct, nearly colliding with the angry green-haired woman leaving. He watched her leave as he walked to the front desk. Is everything okay? He asked. The officer looked up to Sakauchi, then towards the door where Sakauchi's attention was focused. Yeah, everything's fine. She was just mad that we couldn't help her find her lost dog. I told her she needs to go to animal control. I know a lot of people treat their pets like children nowadays, but this is ridiculous. Ah, Sakauchi acknowledged and tilted his head slightly to the right. Don't you think she looks like that kid who came in for the crime-fighting license a couple days ago? Maybe. The officer scrunched up his eyebrows. Really, the only thing I noticed about the kid was his hair and eye color. And I suppose those are the same. But I could say the same thing about you and I. We have the same hair color and eye color, but as far as I know, we aren't related. Sakauchi hummed. The officer was right, but he couldn't help but feel there was something going on. Unfortunately, he didn't have any evidence to say there was, so he tucked the idea into the back of his mind and went back to his office to try and put a dent in the pile of paperwork sitting on his desk. And that's the end of Chapter 17. Chapter 18 will be up next. And here's the first little bit of Chapter 18. Izuku ran out of the alleyway he had slept in. He was being chased by a low-ranked hero trying to make him out to be a villain just because he wasn't sleeping under a roof. And that is the end, my lovely mythical creatures. Also, what do you think of my little character? Isn't it cute? I love it. I am going to try and make a natural VTuber that follows my face, because that will be a lot of fun. But until next time, drink water and eat donuts. Bye bye.